Hi everybody and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats. I am joined today by the fabulous Regina Mangan of Liberty Blue in Ireland. Darling, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and I love that intro. And I'm looking at you with your Viking mug, and you know I'm sitting in Waterford, which is Ireland's oldest city, founded by the Vikings.
By the Vikings. You know, they found a lot of fabulous things. So, and still need to take you up on your invite to come and see you.
Oh yes, definitely.
Now, just to give a bit of context, you and I have known each other for a few years. So you and I met a few years ago at a PropTech event 8 years ago. Exactly, we had our kind of friendversary, didn't we? Come up on Facebook. Funnily enough, we were talking about how long have we known each other, and then like 2 days later, it was like, congratulations. So you had this kind of, you'd been looking at your business and you decided, we don't know what we don't know. We're going to go over to London, meet some agents, meet some people, see some suppliers, and kind of figure out what we do next. You and I met at one of the PropTech events and we got talking, and obviously I told you a lot about Base and our kind of attitude to automation and streamlining and that blend of tech and people to deliver a great service but an efficient business. And yeah, we went from there. I don't think it was long after that, you came over with your whole team and came and spent, was it 1 or 2 days with us?
Yeah, I actually invited myself over. I said, Kristjan, would you mind if a couple of my team came over? And you went, yeah, sure. 2 weeks later, we were in your office for an entire day. And there was 4 of us that went over, and it was an incredible experience for us. And for me, it was like I was able to look into the future and see how I wanted my business to be whilst I was sitting in your office. So there was a huge difference between your business and ours, in that our office was like a train station at peak time. People coming in, reporting maintenance over the desk, people coming in to pay deposits with their credit card.
Loads of phone calls.
Loads of phone calls, phones jammed, just crazy. And then your office was this sea of calm. And you're all like, hi, people walking past. And I said, what's the story with the phone? I said, it's really quiet. And yet you have this amazing business. And I'm going, he's still making money. They're still really profitable. They seem really happy. They don't seem a bit stressed out. And then you introduced me to various technology that you had and ways of communicating with your clients. For example, you were using FixFlow at the time, which we since implemented. So over 4 years, we implemented somewhere in the region of 14 different pieces of technology, small pieces and big pieces. And it was transformational for us. And it was also a mindset transformation. So continuous improvement and change became part of our DNA. We're always wanting to get better. And what I learned from that event and from you was that people need and expect self-service platforms. In other words, that when they want the information, that they get it pronto, they're not waiting ages for it. And the best piece of technology, I suppose, that had the biggest impact was FixFlow, whereby tenants could upload the maintenance problem in up to 40 different languages. They get automated replies, tutorials, videos that you were showing us how you can show them, reduce the cost for our landlord. It was absolutely a phenomenal game changer.
Well, look, FixFlow is still a great product, but I think in the early days, it was a brilliant example of a tech solution that tackled so many different elements, challenges within that maintenance thing. Like, you mentioned most of them, like you said, it kind of streamlined the reporting process. So rather than people walking in, sending you an email, calling in and having to track that, it brought it all into a system. Like you said, if you work in an international market, it solves that language problem where you're dealing with tenants where English isn't necessarily their first language. It resolves that issue. Data gathering in terms of agents, that problem of, oh, great, you've reported this to me, but you've given me no information. You've just given me like a 3-word thing about, oh, my oven doesn't work. Great.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, it doesn't heat up, it doesn't get hot enough, the light doesn't come on, it doesn't come on at all. And it brought structure to that, right? Because you could customize it, you could make it say, oh, have you checked this and checked that? You could bed in videos or photos saying, oh, you know, this is how you reset the clock on an oven. As we all know, that's a classic reason ovens don't work. And it's also a classic thing that tenants find utterly bemusing. I think the world still finds that bemusing, quite frankly, that the fact your oven clock isn't set can mean your oven doesn't work at all. But yeah, and I think, you know, it, like you said, it takes away that noise, and it takes away, it just delivered a system and a process.
Absolutely. And it's also a really good way to run KPIs with your team, and you're looking at different color codes for what's urgent, not so urgent, how many outstanding tasks, and there's just nowhere to hide.
No, and talking about mindset as well, I think, you know, something really interesting you said, I think, you know, what you were saying about your office being very busy, but not necessarily in a productive way, actually in a quite frenetic way. And I think that is common in agency. I think, you know, agents feel like there has to be this, you know, the phone should be ringing and people should be, and it's like, well, yeah, if that delivers a solution, if that is actually getting stuff done, then great. If that's deals over the line and maintenance actually getting fixed, great. But don't be busy for busy's sake. You don't need to look busy. You don't need to sound busy to actually be busy and be productive. And I think
completely. And I think it's really important as agents and business owners that we work smarter, not harder. And that's what this is all about. And the technology helps us deliver a more prompt service, but also not doing non-revenue generating activities. Even emails now, and all these emails, if people were sending in emails about their maintenance, there's no way of tracking that. It's like throwing a needle into a haystack. And the whole continuous improvement mindset is so important to a business, because there is so much waste out there, so much waste. And that implementation of that technology really helped us. But the other thing is, what's interesting is how us as humans are changing how we want to communicate.
Yeah.
In terms of people receiving phone calls now, I think it's well over 40% of people do not like answering the telephone. They definitely don't like answering the phone to a number that's not saved in their phone. People text, use WhatsApp.
Well, they look at the landline and they're like, oh, that's a landline I don't recognize. It must be a sales call.
Exactly. So how people want to receive communication is totally changed. And even when we look at online shopping, we're not only just competing with estate agents, we're competing with other industries. The expectation of the customer booking a hotel, you never ever get anyone to answer a telephone in England. I thought this was crazy. I can't ring up, talk to a human. Now I would never dream of ringing a hotel. I go online and I book it. I put in my special request. People want to shop. They mostly shop online. That is how the world is changing, and we have to wake up to that. My office is really quiet now. The phone isn't ringing, but our business has never been doing as well.
And look, I think you've made some really valid points there. I think you've got to, as an agent, you can't treat what we do. We can't treat our industry as something unique and special that is exempt from customer expectations. And like you said, I think whatever it is, whether it's your supermarket shop or you're booking a hotel or holiday, or you know, going to an experience, or you go to your hairdressers or barber, you know, whatever it is, your daily banking, everything you do, you've got to think about, right, this is, like you said, this is the new world of working. This is what I want. Like, I want to be able to pick up my phone and go beep, beep, bop, 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 and I've, you know, whatever, I've paid my rent, or I've booked that holiday, or I've, you know, asked for quotes for whatever. Like you said, I don't want to speak to lots of people. I don't want to be going and searching for 2 hours doing research. I just want it all to happen quite quick and easy. And I think Yeah, there's too many agents out there who are like, oh, that's all well and good for the travel industry, but selling property or renting property is different. And it's like it's really not. Those consumer expectations, that customer journey, that
absolutely. And there's another thing to remember as well. And during our conversation, as estate agents worldwide, we are regarded very poorly in the trust bracket.
Yeah.
And the more transparent and efficient we are, the more likely that the public will trust us more. For example, we mentioned before we started recording, bidding on properties, that people didn't have trust around that for a long time, both in Ireland and the UK, but we're heavily regulated now. But we use a bidding platform called Offer, OFFR, shout out to them, because they provide an amazing customer service. But also how they work with us is amazing. But when we load a property on to Offer and somebody places a bid, they have to give us their data, they have to give us proof of funds, and we approve them. And when they place an offer, nobody else can see who they are, only us. So their status is confidential. But anyone else placing an offer gets a notification and they can place a bid. So they see real life bidding, the vendor gets an update. So it's moving at the pace that business needs to happen now, but also it's transparent. So the buyer can trust the process and they feel much happier about it. We do tend to get a better result as well for our clients using the platform. So it's a real win-win. But my stepson was bidding on a property some months ago, and it took 8 days to get an answer from the agent. I feel that's quite unacceptable in today's world.
We've all seen those. We've all seen the metrics, right? There's the stat that gets wheeled out at every kind of industry event each year. At least it does at EA Masters, and it has remained largely unchanged for the last 10 years. And it's that stat that half of all leads never get responded to. And to me, that stat still absolutely blows my mind. When you think how often agents have a damn good moan about how much they spend on portal advertising, and then you contrast to the fact that they've got half of their leads. And the shocking thing is, right, we know that statistic is right, but we also know the top 20-30% of agents will be contacting 80, 90, 100%. So what that means is down the bottom, that bottom 20 or 30%, do they contact any leads? Are they contacting like 10% of their leads and leaving 90% unanswered?
Look, there's always going to be poor performers, I guess, in every industry. But that leads me on to another great tip you gave me a number of years ago, was around Google reviews. And you said to me, do you get Google reviews? I was like, oh, no, not really. So we started focusing on that. And obviously, Sanjay totally drove that point home during mentoring for me, because we're talking about certain things that great agents have helped me with and advised me on, and stuff that's worked. Google reviews have been amazing in helping build our profile, build our SEO, but building trust that customers can see what other customers are saying. And I think that's really important.
So that you've brought up Sanjay there, and that brings us into really, it's something obviously we've already touched on, because we've talked about having you in our base offices for a day with your team. But I think it's something I really want to talk to you about, because it's something we keep coming back, and it's this collaborative piece. It's like, it's great, the putting stuff into your business is great, but sharing ideas about what to put in your business and how, and what works and what doesn't. I think one thing I find really exciting, but I still think a lot of agents don't do, and I think largely because they're cynical, is collaboration and talking. Right now, we're not for 1 second saying that you're going to collaborate with your competitor across the street. We're not mad. And that would have to be a pretty special relationship. Although, we in London, we collaborate. We've got very good close relationships with agents who, in theory, you could call competitors, because we're fundamentally in the same market.
Yes.
Targeting the same properties, but we readily talk and share ideas of business practice. But do you know what? It was encapsulated for me. I saw an agent rainmaker promo video the other day. And one thing that stood out for me, it had all these kind of vox pops in it. But one of the vox pops from, I think, their event last year, or one of the mid-year events they do, was a business owner saying, oh my God, I felt so alone and so out of the loop until I came to Agent Rainmaker, and I sat in a room of agents and I heard them all have the same problems, the same stresses. And all of a sudden we've got this network of people and we talk to each other. And, I'm massively paraphrasing, but the bottom line was they kind of had this epiphany thing of going to Agent Rainmaker, and that delivered that. Right? It's great that delivers that. So shout out to Agent Rainmaker. But to all of the agents out there who are being cynical, reach out. There's a lot of us out there who either put information out. If you don't want to contact us in person, there's a lot of us out there who put a lot of information out there and make what you will of it. And there's a lot of us who are happy to jump on a phone, jump online, have you come into offices. You mentioned Sanjay. So Sanjay are Moss Properties.
Yes, Moss Properties, yeah. And also they have the Fine and Country in York as well. But look, Sanjay's super connected and he's a wise man. He used to, before he went into real estate about 18 years ago, he used to run very big bingo businesses, and he's a very shrewd operator. I learned a lot from Sanjay, but also as part of a mastermind group with other UK agents, and I learned so much from him and the other people in the mastermind group, and also knowing what good looks like. Yeah. What does good look like? And sharpening the soul.
So let's shout out some of the people. So we talked about Sanjay, Matt Giggs. I know you.
Matt Giggs is a great guy. Sanjay's been to Waterford. Matt Giggs has been to Waterford. Matt is a great guy. I did some mentoring with Matt. And the big thing that I got from Matt Giggs was all around values and culture. And we had written up our values and our culture document, and it's in a drawer somewhere, and we didn't really live it. And nor maybe we didn't really get it until we sat down and wrote values that really meant something to me and the team.
Yeah.
For example, we do the right thing. Even I had a conversation with John, my colleague, this morning, and we've got very big legislation around rental in Ireland, and I see England is going the same way. But he was saying that another agent rang our tenant to say, I'm selling the property, you need to move out. And John said, can you imagine that? He said, the tenant has 6 months notice. Why would you tell them they've to go? And we had this, and I said, you know what I love when we're having this conversation? You're with us from day one, you understand our values, we do the right thing. We never ever, even when it might suit us, to do the wrong thing. So I'm just turning this around. So I would say that Matt Giggs drove this home to a point that it is in our DNA now. So we strive to bring happiness to customers, colleagues, and our community, to be helpful experts and champions of Waterford as a great place to live. So that meant for example, one day, one of the team said, oh, this guy's after ringing. He said that our for sale sign is tipping off his curb. And I said, right, so what you going to do? And he said, well, it's not tipping off the curb. I said, does it matter if it's tipping off the curb? He's not happy. Yeah. Read the wall. We strive to bring happiness to our customers, colleagues, and our community. Is that man happy? No. Right, so what are you going to do to make him happy? Going to move it. Great. And what else are you going to do? We'll deliver a card, an apology, and some chocolates, because that's what we do. It's not about being right. It's about doing the right thing. And it stood to us so well to understand.
And that people remember how you make them feel.
Exactly. So that I would say to Matt Giggs, Sanjay, for all his wisdom and experience in the mastermind. We've done training with Stephen Brown, and that's been really brilliant.
Have you visited the titans that are Paramount? Have you been to see Spencer and Reagan and their team there?
No. All
right, so that's one you got to put on your wish list. Shout out to those guys who I sometimes wonder how they ever get any work done. The amount of agents that they work.
Paramount, really. Where are they based?
So Northwest London, in Hampstead, Northwest Hampstead. Yeah, fabulous. I mean, again, you talk about culture and ethics, and also what's capable. They've kind of turned the typical attitude, particularly in London, you know, the general consensus used to be lots of branches to build a substantial business. They are a single office, estate and lettings agency. They manage a couple of thousand tenancies. Yeah. So we're talking 7 to 10 offices worth of lettings and property management business, all run through a single office.
Wow. Yeah.
And
proper technology systems and people.
proper technology, they're constantly evolving. Everything we've talked about, huge focus on culture and ethics. You know, they were one of the first agents I know to really look at the language, and they're passionate about talking about their owners and residents, which is a language we've adopted within our business. You know, they literally, you know, this culture of looking at everything and coming back and revisiting things, and so generous with time and ideas and everything else.
And you know, that's a really important point you made there about language. I love that. Owners and residents. And I remember I live in Ireland, and we have a very, very, very negative connection with the word landlord.
Yeah.
Going back to the famine and how landlords displace people, and how millions of people died of starvation in Ireland because of the landlords. And we're still talking about it. I call them small property owners, but I think our owners, I like that much better. Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, full credit to Paramount on that one. You know, look, there's always that challenge. I think whenever you adopt a new language, you've also got that marketing split in your brain, right? Because there are realities with culture, but there's also terminology. And in terms of attracting clients, you know, the fact of the matter is your average owner, your average landlord out there is going to typically search for terminology like tenants, landlords, letting agents, etc. So you've got to find that balance. I think we kind of take a view that in conversations with our owners and residents, that is the language that we use. That is the language centered within our website and how we convey our attitudes. But you will often see when I'm posting articles and thought pieces and stuff, I will talk about landlords and tenants, because, you know, that is
you kind of have to. I get that. But
technology. But as a culture, as the way we look and treat the people we actually do business with, our clients and our customers, then yeah, it is very much owners and residents, and that kind of, like you said, removing kind of toxic.
Also shout out to Christopher Watkins, because Christopher shares an amazing amount of information and wisdom, and whether some people agree and some people don't agree with him, he's quite brilliant, and he's very, very generous. Like, one of the things, and I saw you guys doing it, which works, is talking about good properties to buy for investment, but not only talking about your own portfolio, talking about properties with other agents, because then you are being the expert. You're also being impartial. And I got really nervous. I did it a few times, and I got a call from an agent. I thought, oh my God, he's going to bollock me for giving a shout out to his property. But thankfully he was ringing about something else, because it's just such a deviation from the norm, but it makes so much sense.
Oh, look, I think, you know, we, like you said, we've done it for quite a while now. We stopped for a little bit. That was on us, just not being on top of our marketing. But we've done it for a while now, and yeah, I think, you know, it adds a real validity to you as an expert to say, look, my expertise isn't tinged by what suits me or what's going to necessarily put business through my door. Like, I'm an expert, and, you know, these are the opportunities to you. You know, I will regularly do shout outs to other agents as well when we read an article about an agent who's done something either really impressive within the business, or they've brought in a new service or a new approach to doing something that has solved a classic customer conundrum or frustration. You know, I love giving agents shout outs to that, and I always find it funny that I have had agents at conferences stop me and like, why do you big up other agents? Like, that's really weird. Why would you be complimentary about another agent? And I'm like, but you
know, Kristjan, you're absolutely secure in yourself and your business. And it's a really positive reflection on you to give a shout out to another agent. It's just not something that's really done. It's like the book I wrote, Maria said, they're going to know all our secrets now. I put in all the technology, I've listed all off, I listed all the mentors off, I've listed off the books, the podcasts, it's all there. And if somebody wants to use it or copy it, brilliant.
But look, and I think, if you're really honest with yourself, there's nothing stopping your average property owner selling or letting a property themselves, right? There's nothing stopping them. If you were, even if you want to do it properly, you go out there and educate yourself. The amount of content that is available online that will educate you on legislation, regulation, marketing tips, all this sort of stuff, it's out there. But the reality is, it's a whole lot of work, right? And actually, let your prospective seller or landlord or owner go and do that research and figure out, because you know what, very quickly they're going to come back to you and go, oh, do you know what, when we spoke 2 weeks ago, I thought you were really expensive, but I've now wrapped my head around just 10% of what you do.
But even sharing it with other agents, what we're talking about, I would share openly the technology we use, and some of my competitors would ring me, and I have no problem with that, because at the end of the day, nobody can be you, nobody can be me, and a rising tide lifts all boats. That's kind of the view I take on it.
And that's right. One of the burdens we all bear, you touched on it earlier, is this lack of trust and respect as agents within the public forum, and ultimately, as an industry, if we ever want to become a bona fide profession, if we ever want to lift ourselves out of the doldrums of how we are perceived in the public, it has to be about us all lifting each other up, right? It has to be about us as an industry moving forward and raising standards, us saying to the agents that struggle, don't worry, do this, it'll fix that. If you implement this, it'll solve that problem. You will manage those inquiries better. You will resolve those maintenance issues better, and the general perception of us as an industry lifts, and we all benefit from that. So, yeah, and what I would say is that every business has a different motivation. I love your mantra that you've got on the wall there, and you get it. Everything is in that sentence that you guys drive for. Now, there might be agents watching this who are like, oh, it's a bit flowery, a bit fluffy. Again, we don't.
But you know what, though? If you drill into it, like anyone who knows me would know that I'm not remotely flowery or fluffy. The language, at the end of the day, what do we all strive for in life? It is actually happiness.
Yeah.
You don't get up in the morning and think, I want to grow my profit margin. You want to be happy. Now, how each of us are happy is very different and individual, right? But our clients, if we make our clients happy, each client is it's understanding what the client's needs are. So for selling a property, we must listen and understand what the client wants. So they want to move quickly, or they want the best price, or they want, to wait until the probate's done. If we do a great job, then we create happiness for our clients. Then the staff are happy because you're enjoying delivering it great. Now, obviously, the world of real estate is stressful. It's not always going to be a bed of roses. There's going to be really tough days. Sometimes bad days are followed by bad days, and then good days are followed by good days. But usually it's not bad days all the time. But really, if you focus on happiness, getting rid of shitty clients who bring down the happiness barometer, firing those clients.
Again, the power of no.
Do that, right?
We won't dive into that too much, but
right.
Like you said, getting rid of those energy sappers.
But that's really important. So if you are doing a great job for your clients, you're making them happy and you're enjoying it yourself. And then you create a profitable business, because we have to have a profitable business. Otherwise, we don't stay in business.
Exactly. But I think the point I was just going to make was, look, great. Look up some of the people that we've mentioned. Look up your Spencers and your Reagans at Paramount Properties. Look up your Sanjays, look up your Matt Giggs, look up Chris Watkins, Stephen Gates, like, you know,
great guys.
Put loads of stuff out there, go out there, educate yourself. But, you know, if you look at these people, if you look at these businesses and you think, not really my sort of person, not really my sort of business, cool, go and find the person, the business that you do align with. Go and find that person that is achieving what you consider success and is doing it in a way that you align with, and reach out to them. You know, there are these kind of go-to people, and you know, you and I are both advocates, like you said, bring the joy, be happy, deliver service, look after people, and you know, that's kind of rewarding in itself for you and your team. But you know, we all run different businesses with different objectives that cater to different personalities and different.
Exactly. And if I could just on that say that I'm in business 28 years, I've always had a mentor, either one or two mentors, and that's a really good way to help you sharpen the saw, to be accountable. And I met Rob Graves there in Cornwall while I was over on holidays a few days ago. And I'd done a podcast with him, but there's nothing like meeting somebody face to face. That connection is just totally different. And Rob and I had a great conversation. He was sharing how he used to improve his business before he sold it for a lot of money. So I love getting advice from successful people, by the way. And he talked about interrogating their processes. He used to go in and look at each process, a different process every week with the team, and see how they could. Sometimes there were small tweaks, sometimes there were bigger tweaks, but that helped them improve the business no end. And I think so many people in the real estate business get caught up in new listings, winning more listings, but they're not actually looking at the profitability of their business or the joy or lack of joy that the business brings them. And Rob, actually, I'm going to give him a shout out because I thought he was a good guy. He goes in and he looks at the numbers. He's a money man. And then, you know, Matt, different coaches bring different things. But I once worked with a mentor and we weren't the right fit. So I moved on. And then you get somebody else. Not everybody's going to be the right fit for you.
And that's it. And I think, you know, you've just got to be honest to yourself, right? There's no point. You don't want to turn yourself into something unauthentic. It's got to be authentically you. So you've got to find, like you said, those allies, those coaches, those mentors that you gel with. And that doesn't mean that they just constantly pat you on the back and tell you that you're fabulous, because that's all you don't need. You need accountability. And
areas to work on for improvement, you know. And if you're listening here and you're feeling a little bit lonely and you want to sort of learn from others, maybe even set up your own mastermind group, go on to forums and find out other mastermind groups. Sometimes small shares can be a big deal. Even you're having a bad day, how to deal with a tenant or a landlord or a vendor, being able to bounce that off somebody else is great. And as you said earlier, a lot of agents, we all have the same problems. They're not unique to us.
Look, I think for some agents, they've got so many things they want to change in their business. That is kind of the problem, that they just get paralyzed by where to start, right? I think they become overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, where do I start? And I think, you know, the only advice I would give anyone like that is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you start. All that matters is that you start. So pick somewhere. If you can't pick somewhere, do something random. Put 5 things in a hat. If you can't pick between 5 things, put them in a hat and pick one. Or God forbid, ask your team. You know, if there was one thing we could change this week, if there's one thing we could get rid of or make better by the end of this week, what would it be? I can almost guarantee you that you will get a very strong answer to do a specific thing, if not a unanimous, like, please Christ, can we not do that anymore?
Absolutely.
Start doing it. And I think, you know, moving on from that, we wouldn't be a Viking chat if we didn't delve a little bit more into the tech side of things. And you and I touched a little bit on AI before we got on.
Yes.
And I think, you know, we were talking about how, you know, I'm looking at this, we're kind of looking at it as a supplier, we're building our first our first of 3 planned AI tools within the depository, and that first one goes into testing now. But wearing my other hat, my base hat, we actually haven't done too much with AI yet. We've been looking at it a lot. We're leveraging it a lot within our marketing. But the next 6 months, that is going to be my biggest project, is really looking at, again, like we said, every element of base and where can we plug in AI. And again, focus on the things we talked about. What's the turgid stuff? What do we have staff do that isn't fun, where they add little to no value, and really they're just put in a success or fail situation because they either do a task or they don't, but whether they do it or not, they don't actually add any value to that task. They just complete or fail. So, that's going to be our focus for the next 6 months. And I think the interesting thing for us as well is, and I think there's lots of agents, I think you'll identify with this, and I think there's lots of agents out there. We are a very proudly independent letting agent. We are very proud of the fact that we are small, that we have a very large personality as a brand, and that the people within our business are very much a vital part of what we do and how we do it. So we're not for 1 second saying that by the end of this year we want to become some autonomous digital leviathan that is literally just AI doing everything, and no one ever gets to talk to a human anymore. Absolutely the opposite. We absolutely want those people in. We love the people we've got in the business and the personalities they've got. So what we want to do is we want to give them more capacity. So we want to see, like we talked about, and it's the same mindset of everything that we've, you and I have been doing in our businesses for the last 10 or so years. It is still fundamentally that same thing of what can we make better? What do the staff not like doing? As a business owner, what do I sit there watching my staff doing, going,
and Christopher,
focus to spend half their week doing X, Y, Z,
Agreed. And that's a huge thing in terms of staff retention, but also reducing wasteful activities that don't bring any monetary value to the business, but also creating moments of delight. Stephen Brown often talks about that. Moments of delight for your customer. Imagine 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning getting your AI response that feels good. And as you said, you're ahead then of your competitors. It gives you a competitive edge. And then Monday morning, one of the team members can follow that up. So it's an extra touch point. It's a quicker touch point. So
look,
I think it's really important.
Better in terms of what our staff deliver as employees, as part of the business. I can think of nothing better in the next 6 to 12 months. If what we can achieve with AI means that, let's say, at least 50% of the day-to-day grind that they do is gone.
Yeah,
and part of their working hours is gone. So there's still that other half is still where they add the value, right? So that's where your property managers are tackling that really tricky leak, or handling that really complex insurance claim on behalf of a client, or you're taking through a really difficult sale and navigating all the different
and making prospecting calls, prospecting calls, check-in calls with your clients, human connection, where you're really adding value.
That make people happy, going out and moving that sign, not because you have to, not because you're obliged to, but because it makes someone happy. I would be delighted if, of that 50% of work we remove. Now, obviously, the idea is we're going to use that partially to leverage their capacity so we can deliver the same service over more properties. But what I'm really hoping is, of that 50% that we free up, if half of that, if 25% of a member of staff's time can be spent purely, like you said, bringing the joy.
Exactly. Creating moments of magic, creating moments of magic.
Whether that's going to meet a tenant at 1 o'clock in the morning who's got a bit drunk and locked themselves out.
No, we don't do that. We have a security company that does that. We draw it on.
I mean, literally, I did that one off the cuff, but I'm like, whatever it is, a contractor messes up and, you don't need to, but you dash down to let them in, or, a tenant needs a boiler topping up, and rather than them wait for a plumber tomorrow and they don't feel comfortable doing it, you pop down and do it. There's no intrinsic value. That hour spent doing it is probably not financially worth the time spent on it, but that magical moment, that tenants don't expect, residents don't expect it from letting agents, particularly if they've been renting for a while, if they've been around the houses, they've had those poor experiences, they've had that apathetic landlord, they've had that agent who doesn't get back to them for days, if ever, so when you deliver those things, you get those wows and people remember.
And there's so many things we can do. One of the things that we do that works really well is business spotlights, where we do a video spotlight on another business. So you free up the time to do that. So you're helping another business, you're getting profile for them, you're connecting with their audience. In terms of the world of marketing, it's so competitive now. We'd be better off to invest in the marketing and the connection with our customers or prospective customers than doing these wasteful activities.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to share before we finish is I'm really crap on technology. So if anybody's listening and thinking, well, look, I'm not good at technology, we have invested a lot in technology. We've transformed our business through technology. But I want to say I'm absolutely rubbish at it. Unlike you have a natural, I suppose, understanding of technology. It comes easy to you. We have five remote controls at home. I genuinely can never figure out which one to use for the television. That's why when I said I was going to PropTech, that they all laughed. And so I'm really bad at it. What I do want to share is that I look at how we do things and I look at how I want them to be, and then we do the research on what technology can solve the problem, and I look at the potential return on that investment. And when people think, oh, that technology is too expensive, and yet they don't mind sending someone out all day long doing these wasteful long administrative jobs, which could be solved like a simple app like inventory base.
And often for no other reason than that's what they had to do when they did that job 20 years ago. Like, I had to do it, so you have to do it. Come on, people.
Yeah, so it's really about learning and sharing this information. And I'm going to Birmingham next week to the XP conference because the lovely Adam Mackey has invited me over, and a great guy, very good guy. And I'm looking forward to learning, and I'm going to be extra honing in on AI after this conversation.
Yeah, and look, I love the fact that you've made a point of clarifying that, because I think there are a lot of people who, like you say, kind of have this disclaimer of, oh, I don't really do tech. I don't get tech. It's not my thing. Ugh.
Yeah.
Do stuff that scares you. I mean, that's always a generally healthy attitude to take to life. I'm a big advocate of do stuff that scares you, because 99% of the time you're going to find out there was no good, valid reason to be scared of it in the first place. And you'll probably have quite a bit of fun. But also, pushing yourself out your comfort zone. Okay, great. You're not great at tech. You don't understand it. But you've got your team around you. There will be someone in your team who will be a bit more tech savvy, who will happily be there to kind of take the lead and go, do you know what? That's great. You've
you can't do it on your own. I bring it in. I say, this is the problem we want to resolve. And then they decide whether it's good enough.
And involve your team. More often than not now, most products, there's a quite advanced marketplace. And in most instances, you will have choices. So, let's take payments, for example, rental payments. You had the initial kind of the leaders in the market. You've got PayProp, but now you've got Let's Pay, you've got Carmony from Agent OS, you've got CasaPay, I think is another one that's come out recently. So have a look. If you can't figure out, put it in front of your team. Who does your accounts? Who processes your rent and deposit reconciliations within your business? Guess what? Sit down with that person and figure out what is going to transform their life. What is going to help take them on that journey with you, because then also they're going to have buy-in. When you sign up to that product, they're going to want to work with it, to refine it, to configure the settings so it works exactly the way you want it to.
So just to share the power of this sharing, I'm going to ask you a favor on this call.
Here we go.
Can John Darcy on my team contact someone on your team to see how you do the payments, to see can we smarten our system up a bit better?
Absolutely. You know, as you know, always and any time.
Thank you.
Definitely something that will need to await my much wiser, sensibler, more organised business partner, Annika.
Brilliant.
She is back from holiday middle of next week. So yeah, I would say give her next week to get settled back in. But after that, have John reach out and Anne will happily sit down and talk through what she does and what she loves. I definitely recommend he also reaches out to Matt Baldock if you're not already familiar with the Baldock brothers.
Okay.
They are lovely, two brothers in Essex that very passionately do a monthly directors dinner in London, which is just
yes, I've seen that.
Inspires. Unfortunately, I've been unable to attend for about a year because literally every month it coincides with either something I've already booked in for, or it's the night before something I'm doing, and I'm like, no.
But isn't it powerful when we share this information? I just have this sneaky feeling that we're going to be able to reduce our payment process after speaking to Anne in a few weeks' time. And all of the improvements that we've made in Liberty Blue over the number of years, from meeting you, from going to PropTech, from being part of these mastermind groups, it's brilliant. Also, we didn't mention, if you're ever deciding to sell your business, your intellectual property is super important. It's very difficult to sell a business successfully if you do not have robust processes and systems. It's a real added value in the sale of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I think we've kind of done the houses there. I mean,
yes,
lots of stuff for people to on there, but I think, you know, fundamentally it comes back to the core things. You know, talk. We're all agents. We're all fundamentally, hopefully, trying to do a better job, make people happy, deliver a great product or service. So find the businesses and the people that you identify with, you align with, and reach out. You know, say hi, fire over a question, a problem, you know, or like you did, go to a PropTech event, go to one of the big conferences, go to the EXP, or you know, if you're more independent, at EXP, look at FIA, they're doing a conference. But a lot of the franchises and businesses there, like just find those networks where you kind of find your people and start talking and asking questions, start sharing the problems you've got and the solutions you need, involve your team. But don't stand still and don't be scared, right? Don't, you know.
Absolutely. Continuous improvement and a rising tide lifts all boats. So on that note, Chris.
No, absolute pleasure.
Kristjan, did I say Chris? Chris, somebody else is waving there at my Kristjan, a pleasure. And I would like to publicly acknowledge the support and help that you gave me over the years. It really, really has helped us hugely. And I'll say thank you in Irish, Gurv Míle Mágat.
Love that. It's been fun. I can't wait to get my butt in gear and get over to Waterford and come and see your beautiful city. And
great. You know, we'd love to see you.
History.
Thanks a million. Okay, Kristjan.
Darling, all the best.
Slán.
Hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.